So I just real quick wanted to talk for a few minutes about when you're parenting, teaching your kids, how to teach your kids, and how to help them to learn something, how to help them to really commit it to memory, that kind of stuff. Um, you hear people talk a lot about I want to teach my kids a lesson. Sometimes they mean it in more of a um, sarcastic way. Sometimes they mean it in more of a um, condemning way, obviously, that kind of stuff. And so I want to just look real quickly about the idea of parenting. So sometimes when we're trying to teach our kids something, we will we'll try to teach too much at one time. So I mean, instead of spreading out the lessons and realizing it's not a sprint. This is an endurance race. We're trying to slowly and steadily teach our kids how to be an adult, how to mature, those kinds of things. And sometimes we get caught up on things that don't really matter, or we get caught up on trying to make them like us. So an example of trying to make them more like us, maybe we're really outgoing and maybe they aren't. That's okay. Maybe you really like reading and maybe they don't. Your kids aren't going to be like you, and so sometimes you have to kind of pick your battles. And then another thing is sometimes we kind of make big deals out of things that really aren't. That's not the style of music that I like. Rather than, focusing on the important part, this song is talking about a lot of things that's not okay. There's a lot of songs that our kids listen to that are about stuff like rape. And then we say, oh no, rape's bad, but then the music that we allow in the house is focused on rape. And the idea is the style of music isn't the problem. And when you turn a bunch of when you never miss an opportunity to argue with your child and let them know all the things that they're doing wrong, they really won't listen to you too much. And another little thing is if you try and get them to have the same childhood that you had when you were a kid, they're not going to listen to you. Well, when I was a kid, well, you're not a kid anymore, and the times have changed. Like, they're not going to listen to what you have to say. Focus on the big things. So with all that being said, you have to spread out your lessons. You're not going to teach them everything overnight. They're not going to instantly change overnight. They're not going to do everything perfect. Focus on the things that are important and then spread those lessons out. You know what I mean? Start introducing the idea a couple times, maybe over the span of a couple months. See what I mean? And then give opportunity to have monopolize on teaching opportunities. There's going to be sometimes when your kids want to talk and sometimes when they don't. One of the biggest mistakes that parents trying to do is try to make their kids adapt to them. Well, I'm here now. You should be talking to me now. Well, yeah, I understand that, but your kids aren't. You can't turn your kids on and off. There's going to be times when, well, for instance, how was school today? Fine. What'd you do in class? Nothing. So, I mean, they're not wanting to talk, and you're trying to push it. I guarantee you this. Don't nag them. And then when they come on their own accord and say, I had a really rough day today or whatever, then stop whatever you're doing and listen. Because kids, really, you have to remember they're their own person. They're learning how to be an adult. They're learning how to make their own decisions. What we do is we kind of get a little bit scared, and so we try to either make all their decisions for them, or we try and make it where they have nothing but their own decisions. You know what I mean? Oh, they're their own person. It's like, well, you don't have to go between those two extremes of lawlessness and legalism. Like, there is a middle ground where you can still teach your kids and still give them the opportunity to make a mistake and let that be okay. Okay, when you're teaching your kids, make sure to spread out the lessons. It's not going to be something that we're going to stay here until you get it right. Well, I get what you're saying, but that's really not how kids learn. The second little thing I wanted to say about this, about teaching our kids, is that experience will always teach more. What we try to do is we try to keep our kids from making mistakes. We try to keep them from doing something that they'll regret. But that's really how people learn. I mean, think back over your life and say, how did you learn? Maybe you learned from a sibling who was messing up. Maybe you learned from doing something stupid and you said, wow, I'll never do that again. And so then you're trying to remove experiences from your child so that they don't have to suffer. It's a good goal, but the problem is that that's not how kids learn. A good example, there's this book in the Bible called Job, and throughout this book, some really bad things happen to this guy, and he ends up saying, God, if I could just present my case to you, like I don't deserve this. And at the end of the book, God does show up, and then he says, I heard about you, but now I see who you really are, and it's very overwhelming. I take away everything that he said. What was different? Well, what was different was that Job in that moment he had an experience with God, and that's the exact same thing that happens in life. We try and tell and tell and tell and tell, and we nag to death. Let them make the mistake. Now, obviously, you're going to have to intervene if it's something certain. Like, for instance, if you say, okay, well, I'll just let my toddler learn by experience, and he'll touch the hot burning stove and burn his fingers off. Well, I mean, obviously, hold on. According to age and according to, be reasonable. Don't shoot yourself or the child in the foot just to teach them a lesson. I mean, give them the opportunity to make mistakes and to learn from that experience. What's a good example of this? I'm used to road biking, and I had a mountain bike, and I was going too fast on a road, and I turned too sharp, and I didn't lean right, and it was just a whole bunch of different things. And so I slid on the gravel that was on the road, and I crashed really hard, really hurt, really, really, really bad. And I learned what not to do. If somebody was to tell me, it wouldn't have really clicked. We all learn in different ways. And experience just has a way of teaching us things. Like, well, maybe I shouldn't have gotten into that relationship, for instance. And, there's just a lot of different ways that this applies. And I don't want to give too many examples on this because I want you to kind of just stop and think for yourself on this. It's important that kids learn. You allow them to learn by experience and allow your house to be a place where they can make mistakes. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about do the drugs, and then I'll always be here to bail you out of prison. I'm not talking about that kind of nonsense. I'm talking about... I want to join this activity at school. Well, I don't think that's going to be good, and I don't think you're going to enjoy it. But okay, see what I mean? Let's let our child do it. So when they say it, instead of saying, okay, so I mean, letting them learn, and maybe they will like it. Who knows? Micromanaging your kids is never something that will help them to learn. It'll be something that helps them to resent you. And so make sure that when you're trying to teach your kids lessons, number one, you spread out your lessons. There's the big thing right there. And then number two, remember that experience will always teach your kids more than nagging will, a lot more. And remember to give opportunity to make mistakes. This is a safe place for making mistakes, that kind of stuff. But you have to obviously temper that with wisdom, conscience. Obviously, don't leave your kids to parent themselves. But at the same time, allow them to make mistakes. That's it.